You already know the background of why we picked the NCA. On one level of reality, you can say it doesn't exist. On another level of reality, it is very real. In certain halls of power, there's a maneuver happening that can shape our lives for the next 100 years, or 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It's a little bit like moments in our history when something that wasn't something became something. Yeah? So that's why we're talking about it. I think we already know that it was discussed a while back, some years ago. We have a sense of how the conversation started, not with this current government, but with the past government, or maybe even governments. Yeah? Some people thought, no, we have to push this through, found someone to push it through at the highest level, which is Dr. Jeffrey. And I guess Dr. Jeffrey saw the opportunity in it. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He really saw an opportunity for Sabah. Let's just put it that way. There are a couple of other things that were driving it, which is COP26. So, Conference of Parties, number 26, was in Glasgow in November last year. Yeah? And the topic there is climate and the country's different commitments to mitigating, adapting to the idea of climate change and keeping climate change to as low impact as possible, which they say is below 1.5 degrees. That's why the language of 1.5 is out there, 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's also a marketplace. So it's the who's who. All the countries are there. All the big players, the NGOs, the funders in that carbon climate world are there. So some tens of thousands of people descended in Glasgow in that time. So people also think, wow, the way to be at the table is to bring something big. And here we are. And that's why possibly the size of the deal, 2 million hectares. Okay? And so they were pushing for it to be signed before COP. So it's like, if it's going to happen, it has to happen, and it has to happen before COP so that we can be present at COP. Okay? We all tracking kan? And remember, COP represents konon the world, the global world interested in carbon and climate. Climate, but carbon is central to climate. So I then heard a few days before it was signed that there was a meeting held. Very, very few people, mostly top civil servants, and then the key people who are the proponents. Of course, Dr. Jeffrey was there. And the pushing for it to be signed. And for some people in the room, it was the first time they ever heard of it. Certain civil servants, high level, said, can we do it at the heart of Borneo, which was November 9, yeah? So it was a little bit of a delaying tactic. Sir, can we have it at the heart of Borneo? But it was not signed. And then heard a few days later, it was signed quietly. So we speculate that, of course, that the people who are on the agreement, have you all seen it? The signed agreement, because it's online. Stan Golokin signing on behalf of Hawk Standard. Fred Coogan signing on behalf of the forestry. And the chief minister signing on behalf of the state government. And the witness on both sides was Dr. Jeffrey. So there's a witness signature. Witness both sides was Dr. Jeffrey. So you can speculate who was in the room. We also know now from leaked documents that the state attorney general was in the room, but didn't sign. We can speculate that she didn't want to sign. Okay, but she didn't sign. And we also now know that she was a key person who's been against this. That legally this is giving Sabah away. Yeah, so that's why she stood firm and she didn't want to sign it. So once it was out there, then of course the proponents were like, how did it get out? It was not supposed to get out. So as far as we know, what happened then was something our local and national media picked up from the Mongabe piece, kan? You remember, like Malay Mail, others picked up from there and then more or less told that same story. At the time, I think people were still like, no, this must be fake news. I know I got some messages saying, this can't be true. And then the next thing was that we know for sure is the taklimat. Do we remember the ones we watched yesterday? What date was that? It was Heart of Borneo. Thank you, Ilan. So November 9, we saw on the Heart of Borneo program, Tiara Australia is presenting the name that was in the PowerPoint, Peter Burgess, the CEO of Tiara Australia. He did present, some of us were there. He talked about it generally, carbon and carbon trading, why it is the answer, etc., etc. He never alluded to any kind of deal with Sabah, right? If you recall. And already some of us were there, were already asking questions. So I asked a question. It has come to light that, there's an agreement that was signed with Sabah. You speak about transparency. Can you talk more about the transparency of this deal? And I don't know if you guys realize that that question was deleted. Never addressed, but it was deleted. Because you can see that it was there, now you see it, and then now you don't. And then he never addressed the questions. Some questions were said out loud, that it was in the chat. There was never an answer. Okay, then the taklimat, I don't remember November what it was. 18. So as you can see, they're on their side pun, they're also trying to we have to quickly respond to this. Then we heard the taklimat yesterday. Yeah, that's why we wanted to share that with you. Sorry, but were you there at the taklimat? You weren't there. Oh, you were there. Yeah, Beverly was very key. She asked said a lot of important things, a lot of key questions. And then all else you saw has kind of unraveled in the public space. But now, talk about divide and rule is very divided, right? Those of us who are saying it's going to bring money to the state, this is, why are forests doing nothing? May as well. If we're not going to cut down the forest, we're not going to mine, we're not going to log, it needs to make money. And it can make money, according to Dr. Jeffrey, to the tune of many, many billions per year and many billions for the 100 years. Let's bring awareness. How does carbon work? What is carbon? What does this NCA mean? If you translate it into carbon speak for Sabah, what will it mean for us and our lands and our forests and our ability to self-govern? Public, that this thing be known, but better known, with more details, more information, so we can look at it ourselves and we can come in and speak to it, understand it, be for it or against it or whatever, yeah? We keep thinking that it will somehow come to the table, something will happen, wave after wave, it seems that it's still there. And there's even talk about, a steering committee. Yayasan Sabah is now the implementer. There will soon be a committee to steer it. And then all the noise being created are opposition parties, all people who want the deal themselves, right? Then the other thing we did that was done was the letter to the UN rapporteurs. So the UN works. There are 6 or 7 main bodies in the UN, including the UN General Assembly, which is all the countries, 190 something countries in the world, all the way to the Security Council, Lakan, all this, Economic Social Council, the 6 or 7 bodies, I don't remember. Then the other way they work is they have special rapporteurs on key issues, and one is the rights of indigenous peoples. Okay? There's human rights and the environment. There's all these different special rapporteurs. So it also rotates around the world, and then the moment it's held by a particular country, particular person, and they will respond to the country, to the state, and it will be quite public. The SDGs and the UN were mentioned 30 times in the deal, in the NCA. Indigenous peoples, really, you can look at the NCA, native customary rights and indigenous peoples were not mentioned once. But the UN and SDGs were mentioned 30 times. The UN 12 and SDGs 18 times. We know it's 2 million hectares. We know Balik already, it says, is our totally protected areas, of which everyone has worked on quite hard for many years to protect, particularly what were crown jewels like Danang Maleo Imbak, Crocker Range, which is a biosphere reserve under UNESCO, Mount Kinabalu, which is a heritage site, Danang Maleo Imbak, in application to be a World Heritage Site, Ramsar, wetlands of international importance. All of these are part of, as we know, the totally protected areas, which is about 2 million hectares. So when they keep saying designated areas, not decided, we don't know, it's quite, if those of us in conservation, we know 2 million hectares is our totally protected areas. It's already protected. So when people say, well, what problem do you have? It's going to be protected. It was already protected. We already look after our own house, and we protected it. And then the other thing about carbon trading is additionality. What you can trade is only the additional carbon coming from a particular project. But imagine degazetting 2 million hectares of totally protected areas so that you meet the additionality requirement. You guys tracking? Yeah. So we in conservation know that the only way that there can be anything traded is by additionality, and bar degazetting as totally protected areas, the only additionality is through restoration. Planting new trees to be sinks and sequester carbon dioxide. And that's what we try to kirai. We say, based on the science that's been done in Sabah over the past 20 years, this is what they've done. This is how much it sequesters. This is how much the sink is. This is how much on the market it can gain. And it's very, very different from the figures that's been touted, because the figures calculates 2 million hectares bulat-bulat. You see what I mean? As if that is the additionality.
So this is the emerging future. This is the symbol of the emerging future. And then that's catastrophe and a few people standing.
Climate catastrophe, yeah.
Climate catastrophe. Then these are the very, very, very rich people that have flown to space and are standing on top of money. And this is where hope is.
Oh, look at the rose.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are our jungles.
Mm-hmm. What is this one?
Our jungles. And this is the Crocker Range.
Okay.
This is the perceived value, yeah. That's why the money is like the balik.
Okay.
And then we have the mining companies and the people that want to exploit the value of this.
Oh, wait, is that right? Where's Noel? Neville?
Yeah.
Right. That's right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is dun yang tabalik. And these
Or
two,
sleeping.
yeah, sleeping.
or disabled. Okay.
Not upright now.
Okay, not upright.
Not upright. And
Basically
then,
horizontal, yeah.
yeah. Then we have the flags representing Tanah dan Air. Then this is the kononnya hero of Sabala. There's the katak and all the players for the NCA.
Who importantly think of themselves as superheroes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then behind them, that's the very shiny global capitalist market. Very, very shiny. And they have media in their pockets as well. Or, I don't know, part of the media. Then we have the media all here. We have
This is oil and gas.
oil and gas, mining.
Oil and gas is the dinosaur.
Yeah, oil and gas is the dinosaur.
We also have the offshore funds. That's what this is.
Yeah, then there's the offshore funds with the squid and the ketam and the pari-pari and
This
Okay.
is British Virgin Islands.
Okay.
Banking system.
Okay.
so this is the media. And then this string here represents what's tied to this guy, the katak. So he's kind of got his sphere of influence lah, basically, and this string. So there are some people that's like in here already. Then there's money, and then you have activists that are like kind of on the fence with this one turtle. Then coming here, we have communities, people, the general public.
This is CSOs, right?
Yeah, CSOs. Then there's Cynthia here. And then Ilan there.
Ken
then-
behind me.
Ken behind you. And then there's Phoebe, is fabulous. And I think this is Neville.
Oh.
Can we all like get closer?
Yeah.
I mean, like, can we physically
Oh, I see.
move that little army over there?
Where? Yeah. Who?
Here.
Name yourselves. Can you
Yeah.
name yourselves? Where you are?
I think this is Emily, right? That's Emily.
Oh, Emily is a red
sorry.
feather. Okay.
This is me. Because that was the closest thing to me just now.
Okay. Who's this?
And then this is the UN. That's the UN. Then more of the community and the CSOs. This part's like more like the CSOs, and then these are like the communities, right?
Yeah.
Who's the Captain America in the back?
I think what I can take this one is like this is like the community who don't know about the NCA,
Okay.
don't have yet more, and then there's this one captain there trying to spread the
I see.
awareness.
Okay.
Spread the awareness. So
All right.
So we need to link the spread awareness, I think, with the us squad over there.
Yeah, so it has to be more that side.
We need to link. I think we should claim that.
Okay, maybe that's in the
Yeah,
future.
No. It's in amongst the people, but we need one more string
oh,
to link it. I think.
What are the feels going on here? What do you love? What ignites your best energies?
For me, I see the emergent future. It's not blocked from view. I can, from this angle, it's far away, but I can still see the emergent future.
Okay, others? What do you love? What ignites your best energies? What other emotions come up? If this emotion could talk, what would it say? Okay, anybody? Just go. Just say.
I think kind of mirroring what Ilan was saying about the emerging future, like it's far in the distance, but it's still like you got Yayasan Sabah semua there, but it's still the highest thing up. It's still the most prominent thing when you look at it from this point of view. It looks like the central positioning, ma.
But it looks like the Tower of Mordor with the fire. So not so positive, the emergent future.
Okay, Others? What do you love? What ignites your best energies?
The people, all the but also how they are being disconnected from peace, and how they've been marginalized. Marginalization, oppression, but yet there's some unity, there's some collaboration going on here. Ada, lah. Yeah.
Okay, others? What do you love? What ignites your best energies when you look at the current reality?
I think for me it's the like-minded, surrounded by like-minded people who has the how to say, like a vision of what's right for Sabah and what's not right for Sabah, and being surrounded with passionate and also those who really into the I would say fight lah for this journey. I mean, like for the betterment of Sabahan is what it makes me go further and want to do more, what beyond the bare minimum, like personally for me lah. Yeah.
Okay, any others? What do you love? What ignites your best energies? And what other emotions are coming up? And if they have words, what would they say?
I think I really like the unity here, and also everybody's facing the same direction, and everybody's like on board, and you know, they know what they're doing, just same direction. I think that's what I like. Whereas everybody else is kind of like looking you know, everywhere.
Just whatever you're feeling, because this is we're talking about the feeling and appreciation for what is.
I think it's interesting how Jeffrey Kitingan is represented in the sense that he's got all these ties. Supposedly, he's got his like hands in every little basket, controlling everything. Kan. But when you look at it at the center, at the end of the day, kan, he's got his own hands tied, ba, because of it.
Also, I want to add one, like because like there's Yilan holding Cynthia's hand. It's like we are there, and we make sure that everyone goes together. Like, let's do this together. Like keeping everyone on check and supporting, hopefully, mental health of everyone. Because activists, if you keep on like go without checking everyone in, it's gonna be a very it's gonna come to a point that we are feeling burnt out, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good insight. Others? Last couple?
Give me. Sorry, I wasn't part of this, but I also like the peg on Cynthia, because I feel it also symbolizes like how we annoy each other and how we put pain in each other's ass, but actually we are all united in the cause. And so somehow, even though we annoy each other, I think we are still, I think for me, it's the hope, it's the vision of, we all have the same vision. It might be different how we achieve the vision, and that will annoy us sometimes, but hopefully being together reminds us like, it's like a check and balance thing also lah, but also amidst the pain and the annoyance that we get from each other, I hope we're still united lah, in that same vision. Yeah.
Nice one. Okay. Any more? You ready to move on?
I like how there's a climate catastrophe going on there, but there's also that patch of hope. It just shows like that we will still keep going, you know, despite whatever we see in the emerging future. And yeah.
Okay, so now we go to the south. Truth and action. What are the key conflicts and hard truths that you are facing going forward? What are the key conflicts and hard truths that you are facing going forward?
It was hard for me to look at what's hopeful. So it took, because I feel being in the NGO scene so much, like I always tend to look at the negative side. So actually, from just now, I was looking at this part, and I placed myself here. I didn't symbolize myself, but I feel I'm around here. And the hard truth is that we kind of siok sendiri here among like-minded people, but actually, people who matters the most are the community. And somehow being like this, like we're trying to influence them. But for me, I would rather that is a community champion, not an NGO. But how do we bring this all together, that it's not like us yok sendiri and trying to understand them, but we don't really understand where they're coming from, who they, what really speaks to them, what they really need and all that. And how do we really empower community and not us going to them and influencing them, but to ignite community champions within the community lah. Yeah.
Okay, conflicts and hard truths going forward.
I feel like for me, I see a struggle for resources actually.
Struggle for?
Resources, like with the money. See, it starts there, but then it kind of like tapers off as it goes towards the edge where the communities are. So then I wonder about because this system is kind of like so entrenched in money, like how are you supposed to get things done without all of that cash flow?
Yeah. Key conflicts and hard truths facing us going forward.
Right. Key conflict and hard truth for me is that I wanted to be in the future where I can party, but the truth is in the future there will be a lot of death too. And my conflict and what I'm trying to figure out is how do I link myself towards where's my place within that community too.
As for me, I think the seeing the demand of the carbon trade is keeps me discouraged to continue. But then and also knowing that there are people who really want it to go and there are demands of it, and there are also people who simply ignoring it and just let those who are smart enough to do. So it's think that's few things that keeps answering the question.
For me, I feel like the world is made for these people. I mean, they already take up a huge portion of this board gun, and then they have that offshore banking system made for the rich, and then we have these people here with all their resources, and we have that capitalist thing going on as well. And that just makes our work more difficult in a way. Even this NCA, they are trying to put it off as conservation, and then confusing the communities. We already hear talk on the ground about how they can benefit from this replanting kan. And but at the same time, like Bani said yesterday, one thing that we can use is through the masses lah, through knowledge macam tu. And that's what we're trying to do with the communities. Macam si Anchaka pun, we have a community as their own champion, which will help us lah. Kalau kita bergerak sendiri memang tidak jalan lah. But yeah, that's going to take a lot of work lah.
I want to point out also, remember what Nick was sharing about how many percent of the world has 90% of the wealth? And then how many percent of the world has 5% of the wealth? Do you remember that? Don't remember the stats, but I think you see the embodiment here, kan? Yeah. Okay. Key conflicts, hard truths facing us going forward.
I think sometimes when communities are so disempowered and then everything is about money, they could not see the actual wealth that they actually have because it's all about money. And then sometimes, again, when we want to talk about the future with communities, it's like it doesn't have any leg lah. This is inspired by something what I heard from a side event in COP. They what they care about is now. What they care about is tomorrow. So, I mean, sometimes talking about the future agenda about climate change does not have any leg here because the lack of listening and understanding what what really matters for them.
I think that they're all just kind of on their own and like having their own party that kind of turned ugly, and they're not looking here at all. Like they don't see this at all. They're just kind of in their own world, and they're just so ugly. I think that's the truth. I mean, there's just a lot of monsters there.
I want to ask a question. We talk about this as a potential emerging future with the climate catastrophe. Is it already happening for some communities in the world? Is this already present as opposed to in the emerging future? Just a question, don't have to answer. Okay, key conflicts, hard truths. Any more?
The mining industry and the capitalism is very dominant. So even the NCA party going on there is dwarfed by these very dominant bodies or structures, which is the mining and capitalism. So even they are dwarfed by these bigger forces.
And another provocative question, is carbon trading now the new capitalistic industry? Again, a question.
Well, if you photograph it from here, then the parallel across there's no change to the mining industry. Therefore, all this stuff that happens in between seems inconsequential. It's still from the south here, mining is still the dominant single structure, or the mining, the polluting. This is polluting industries, right? So polluting industries and money are the only things here at this very edge. So all whatever else happens in between is still that.
The colonial structures and institutions are still very strong. That forms the basis of what's going on in the middle.
How are you seeing patronage now with this before you? Is it there? Is it everywhere? What is ending in this situation or wanting to die? And at the same time, what is wanting to emerge or wanting to be born? What is ending in this situation or wanting to die? What is wanting to emerge or wanting to be born?
I feel that all those things at the back from here, far away over there, I can't really see any divisions and lines, but they're like at a starting point and they're like ready, set, go, and they're going to go run here towards the emergent future. So they're all ready over there and they're about to invade everything else. That's what they're like, you have to let them go.
I mean, I think an obvious one is the oil and gas dinosaur, in the sense that it's running out. Like we talked about it earlier today. Also, you know, it's not going to last, but you've got this big domineering T-Rex with its tiny little hands that can barely reach the resources anymore, kind of like refusing to let it go, but refusing to let anyone know that it's going to be running out soon.
I like that there's a lot of like vacant spaces, like here, like somewhere there. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I like that there's a lot of vacant space, like here, and even here, and even here. And I feel like these are spaces to be filled. Like there's so much going on over there, but if they can just find a way to move over here, or where it's empty.
So what you may remember about the AG, our civil service.
Yeah, where's the civil service and the AG?
Yeah.
They're kind of missing. So they need to be born. We forgot them. That's what we did. We forgot them.
Well, there's probably a reason you forgot them.
I think they are there, but they because they have not been playing that strong role. That's why they were naturally not there.
Well, we've actually not heard their voices.
Oh.
We have actually not heard their voices in this mix.
So they want to be.
And we have not heard the cabinet's voices either.
Yeah.
So that's real. So just think about it in the shift to the future sculpture, yeah?
The absence of them here in this imagining.
Yeah. Okay, so take note of that.
From over here, the social media, the WhatsApp, is the most active looking object, in that there's some kind of frenetic energy in those spiderwebby things. So it feels to me like they're spinning or something. And I imagine them to suck up more stuff and grow into something. I mean, by their representation as we see it. Yeah.
Is that because there's a kind of latent democratic voice that doesn't have a platform, that doesn't have an outlet?
I'm not looking at it in those conceptual terms, but physically, by the objects that are represented in this imagining, they have tendrils, and the nature of a tendril is they expand and keep going, and they grow, right? So by the representation physically, as they are here, it looks like they're in a state of action or potential action. But what that might take is to be described. But their physical form here allows for it.
Okay, so maybe that just gives us some sense about what might want to be born out of that energy.
And how things are represented, I think it's interesting that they're tendrils and that there's so much action in them. As opposed to the katak, which is tied up. In how we represented it collectively.
We can see like the positioning is in silo, like masing-masing, and then I mean like because they are doing their own business or things, and then there's the civil society there, community there. Like there's a need masing all groups pun in silo. There's a need of connection. There's a need and engagement.
like this is just like assumption lah. Who knows, maybe the NCA could be better if like there's a better engagement, like a more strategized engagement, like a proper planning of it. And then if we have more, if we are all in one page, there is a better Sabah, then we can have we can take the good thing in the future, and then we can have a like a moving circle engagement that is progressing to something that is better, not just giving benefit to one group only, but holistic. I mean, like inclusive betterment for everyone.
Yeah, I think what that makes me think is again going back to the concept of divide and rule, and we can see this play out, right? But also civil society, where most of us are, we're shock sendiri here, as Anne said, in the margin. So there is definitely a divide and rule here, and what of that needs to die, or wants to die, and what wants to be born. And also with the community voice. And remember what Nick was saying about community politics. Yeah, bringing back community politics as opposed to colonizer politics and patronage politics, which is what that is. Yeah, and power, which is what this whole program is about. What does power look like? And what did he say? Just go to your kampong friends. Go sit there. Go eat with them. Go, get the food from the ground, and all those things. What does that look like? And then the other challenge for us is how to look at those guys as humans. How to look at all these towers as humans, made up of humans.
I'm just looking at this pile of money there, and one day I feel like it will deplete, and Natasha was looking at it as hope, but for me, it's like, what else can I exploit? What else can I monetize? So I feel even as civil society, it's like, how do we look forward, and what is going to be the next thing that's going to be our big problem? And in this game of gaining the power, gaining the money and all that, actually, I feel this doesn't really depicts what is really happening, where I feel all these giants are actually like squashing all the communities and, exploiting people, exploiting the weak, and whatever games they are playing here, somehow they get blamed for everything else. So I feel community or people, the weak, like
exploiting, encroaching in forests, and
yeah. So I feel like I would see them somehow. Like I wish that, I mean, if I can move, some people are also squashed in the feet of the giants here. Yeah.
Oh, some people are squashed there.
Like
I see.
I feel because it's like here it's separated, as if whatever they're doing here, it doesn't really affect them. But in reality, they are squashing on whatever rights, whatever resources that the weak, the community has lah. I feel in reality. So it seems like, oh, we're just playing this game among us, nobody gets hurt. But in reality, there's a lot of people who get hurt lah in the process.
Last side, the north. If this situation were designed for learning or to learn from, what might it be trying to teach you? And the spark of the future, what is the deeper purpose or call of the future that you're feeling now? So if this is designed for learning, what is it teaching? And what is the deeper purpose or call of the future that you're feeling?
Continue from the comment just now, like where's the AG and where's the government. So I think, like for me, what came up in my mind just now is if you don't, what's that quote where when you don't take sides, like you are siding the oppressor, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's like that. If you don't take side, you just quiet, then you don't appear anywhere, and at the same time, actually, you're encouraging all that to happen lah. So what my learning points is like, are there good people somewhere there that can, like, let this be somehow closer, and maybe there's some people there in the middle who has influence, but can be influenced to the good side. I mean, how can this all be brought together and work towards good lah?
If this is a reflection, the way all of us laid this out, we put this gang smack bang in the middle. We put ourselves far, far away on the edge, the furthest away from the emerging future. And we put all of this in our subconscious as a group. We put ourselves in a position where we have the most number of obstacles to the emerging future. Psychologically, that's what we did to ourselves, And we put all of this as the most important in the middle. What does that mean in the way that we might lay things out and think?
Our minds are colonized.
Yeah, the work of healing from patronage is very much internal work. Because we did, as Ilan points out, we did do that. We didn't put ourselves in the middle.
We put ourselves next to the community, but not in the community.
Yeah,
And then we put the future the furthest away from us.
yeah. And we centralized all that.
And we linked ourselves to power via social media and media. Versus via Dun, via AG, via other tools that citizenry have, right? So actually media take up a big percentage. Media, be normal media, newspapers, as well as social media, WhatsApp, take up a massive percentage of our psychological mapping.
The system designed to keep us behaving the same way over and over again.
Well, yes, but that's the patronage that we have internalized. So remember what Nick was saying. It's not still being designed. We are now designing it because we're keeping it that way.
And we put ourselves very, very far from our jungle, interestingly. We're so separate from our jungle. The thing that we want to protect that's under threat, it's so far away from us.
To continue from what Neville said just now about how the money, how people, communities, if they only think of, because they have so little that the only thing they can think of is today. Kais pagi makan pagi, like what can I have today, and what brings a lot. And sadly, indigenous beliefs is, our indigenous beliefs is that we are one with nature. We always if you want to go to the hutan, you always, like my parents always say, you make sure you tegur first. We're supposed to be, together, exist together. And sadly, it's so far. And even when you talk to community about conservation, they're like a bit like, they cannot really see it. And that's sad for me because that was actually our roots. So I feel also like how do we bring back, all of nature and community together? How can they exist in a closer space, if not, in a closer space? Okay, so that's one thing. another thing is how media influence us so much. So the importance of also influencing media to not just get caught up in, like the drama, the juicy things, but how can we bring them to this side as well? Because it will influence so much, not only public, but it will also influence that bigger power there lah.
Part 2, change your sculpture such that it better represents the emerging future that you want to create. Capture the essential points that have come clear to you throughout this process. Person who is writing can share the notes as and when appropriate. Ask, what would you need to do to give life to that new sculpture? Do that, ask yourself that at the end. But you can keep that in mind. Change your sculpture such that it better represents the emerging future that you want to create. All right. So think about, while he's taking the picture, everybody, what would you need to do to give life to this emerging future? If you were to think of 3 steps, 5 steps, a strategic plan, a 10-year plan, whatever, what would you need to do to give life to this emerging future?
Open media.
Okay? Are we writing it down? Open media. Smash the box. What?
Make a tikar.
Make a tikar. Is that art or is that?
No, that's reality.
That's
so
reality.
Instead of Melayu, Cina, India, Orang Asal boxes, LGBT, old, young, rural, urban, those distinctions are less async from each other but more shared.
Okay. Others?
Oh
You
yeah,
have to-
sometimes because I think as in civil society, kadang-kadang we just critique the people in the middle just now kan too much. But how can we actually, use that? So yeah, I forgot my point just now.
We have to stop working in our silos.
Yeah, working in our silos, and not only working in our silos, but also like how do we? Because we takut nih to get the power, to be in a position of power, but we need good people in power. So
Yeah, so it's back to the power thing, right?
We need to make the emergent future, which is equal to ideology and policy, to be right in front of our dun and our policy makers, to talk about concepts and vision for the immediate future and not as a faraway concept. Bani's talk yesterday, when everything is about money, of how can money be replaced by other recognized forms of value that are as powerful as money. That's the upside down things. That's more a question. I'm thinking out loud. That's not really a statement. It's because everything that Bani was talking about, the politics and all that, all goes back to money. NCA all goes back to money. So our literal paper money, we've put it upside down, but I don't know what that value system is. But as a question, what is it?
Well, is it because we put it as if
Everywhere.
it's a tikar, right?
Yeah.
So is it?
But what do you? What is it though in an actionable thing?
To me, it's about building. Sorry to use a facilitated term, relational tissue between each other, being the space by which we gather the other.
In my art terms, it's sharing a mat.
Yeah, so it's creating the space to encounter the other, and it's sort of a deconstruction of the table. Yeah, so I think bridging to tomorrow, where are my colleagues? Neville, Phoebe, those of you who are always doing workshops where we do take the tables away. We do sit on the floor and we do sit in circles, and it is about bringing back community politics and then decision making. You know, all our formats are about who are you? Tell us what you do. Tell us about your livelihood, right? You guys just came from this community building protocol, building their own protocols for river management, all these things. So just bridging to the tangible, that is, I think, tikar making, tikar building. But how do we take that away from the margins? And in a way we are, like, let's say, Phoebe, the project that we're working in Sagama, that it got so much recognition because of the community component, so much so that the DID Director General is coming next week to see, like, what is this, all this fuss about this project, because the communities are there. And that the communities was the key component to the longevity of river management. Because it's not the Drainage and Irrigation Department. It's not government of the day. It is the people who are living there. Kan?
Another case of fortress and sophisticated, and then, the style.
Fortress conservation.
Yeah.
So I think that's to me the tikar enacted, right? And more of that.
And it's changing the money value to be a community-built value.
Yes.
So that empowerment, money is being replaced by empowerment.
Yes. And that
becomes a hard idea to talk when you're changing value. So moving from money value to empowerment value.
Well, I think when we talked about it at the table, remember there was like, how do you ensure longevity? Why are the communities there? Why would they care about it 20 years later? I said, well, it's because it prioritizes their livelihoods and their well-being. Of course, they'll be interested in it forever. So I think money changes to livelihoods and well-being. You see what I mean? Which is their food, you know what I mean? It's where we went astray, that somehow amassing wealth was about livelihoods and well-being, but it meant when you amass, you take away from other people, right? That's why you have 5% of people have 90% of the wealth.
That's where the circular economy versus the capitalist economy. So how do we become more circular?
Yeah, I think it goes back to us being able to call out patronage, see that, that. So the patron always is the one that amasses, kan? Why? Because then he says, well, I can keep you safe. Here's 500 ringgit. I can keep you safe. I can keep you safe. And safety is in that form. And everyone's like, oh, he can keep me safe. He can keep me safe. I'm loyal to him.
But if people feel safe, then the leader will have to work harder to get their support. So it's making people feel safe in their life, in their sustainable food security, food sovereignty, all of that, right?
That's where the real money is.
That's where the real money is.
Well,
Sovereignty.
I think that's when they feel safer, is when they have a voice and when they have information. When I think the key reason in Sagama is we went there and we talked to them about this project. By the way, here's this project. It's about this. Would you like to be involved? And that was just epic. That was epic. That was us asking them, this is something they wanted to be part of. We've been asked to do this. Remember? And that was a slow process, but we did it. And then instead of, because we were told, just engage with one kampong. In fact, they gave us a number, just engage with 20 people. But in the end, we engaged with 8 kampongs because we're like, we don't know how to engage with one kampong. This is, you're talking about a landscape, the whole river. So we, in sharing information, and some people were too busy, but in the end, it got more and more and more numbers because they're like, oh, I care about this. The taking care is going to take care of my sacred lands, all our graves, remember? Our fruit trees. Wow, even if our water water can become more accessible, we care about that. So in a microcosm, I think that project does symbolize this move that we just did.
Rather than an initiative focus on saving what we romanticize so much.
And why I think the UN is very much there because this funding came from UNDP. So it was UN. So they are there through UNDP, which is UN Development Program. And they partnered with the federal government. They say, federal government, how do we, in looking at the issues out there, out in the distant future, not so distant actually, how do you mainstream river management to protect biodiversity and protect life? And therefore, this project was about creating policy. And the pilot was in 3 rivers, Sagama, Kinta, and Klang. But the one that they tumpukan perhatian was in Sagama. Why? They said this Sabah intervention has a lot of potential for sustainability. Why? Because of the community component. Remember? So it's not going to be done by DID as a government agency or NGOs. And they did repeatedly say, NGOs, remember NRO said, so in this big meeting that had federal government and our state governments, after they puji already what happened in Sabah, then our NRO spoke up proudly saying, because NGOs have a very strong role to be the bridge. But here we're talking about not just the bridge, maybe. It's talking about working really closely as allies between government, between communities, between civil society, right? And academia and all that. But it was hard. But I think that shift, it was real. It happened over 2 years. 2 years. But it can happen, I think, with that incremental, those steps, slow steps. But then the reality still happens. They may start a policy change process, but as Bani says, there'll be an election this year. And then we go back to square one. Because they'll draw up the policy, and then the government may change. Will the policy still continue its journey to being passed? You see what I mean? Because apparently it takes years for that to happen.
I wonder if you should trust that system because over and over again that system has not been able to serve the interest of the people. Like policy is about to get passed, election and everything get dropped, and that has happened.
Well, we've seen that over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Decades and decades. So like in other countries, people become so stressed out about that, and some of these things cause civil war or revolution in the country. Malaysia have enjoyed peace for so long. None of things like this has ever happened in the country. If you look at our neighbor in ASEAN, like military coup, everywhere, but here.
One of the things that was interesting when we went to Vanuatu, the example that Nick talked about, I was so surprised that they said in their parliament there were few seats only specifically designated to tribal leaders, but those tribal leaders are elected by the peoples, and they, huh?
Not the
Not self-designated.
self-designated.
They're elected, and they're there, and their role is to represent the peoples, and it's not the dun. The dun is the dun, but there's people who represent, you know, the values and the culture and the traditions of the original, the so-called original people. Does that make sense? And I was like, wow, how that happened, and they did that move to make that happen. But that's why it's a reason why the lands, all those things, all those issues that fundamentally concern those peoples are brought to the table because of these few key people.
Like the indigenous imperative became the driving force in the for the government of Vanuatu kan, with the the sharing that we heard last time from the former president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so last key things before we makan. Anything else? What would you do to bring it to life? If you were to actualize a couple of key, like tangible steps, what would it be? What would it be for us? Because we can have some control in CSO, in the civil society. We do have agency in media, not mainstream media, but alternative media. I mean, what other things that we can do?
I think in terms of like untangling the lines of communication and figuring out a way to disperse information in a way that everyone gets the right to be able to make like an informed decision and have an informed opinion. Like how finding ways in which we can get it across everywhere.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been frustrated about, we being Ken and I, in trying to get real information to people, was that the mainstream media, that there was no investigative journalist capacity. Like there was no one Sabahan journalist, mainstream or otherwise, who took this and ran with this. None, not one. Huh?
Why is that?
Why is that? So if you look at whether it was Monga Bay or Al Jazeera, they are people outside of Sabah. There was none of that capacity was taken up in Sabah. I mean, none of that initiative. No one paper. We tried with both New Straits Times and Straits Times. Straits Times because of Singapore. Okay. Trying to build a team. Trying to get a research person on board. Lots of research to do. In the end, nothing. Why is that? So not just our own local media, then there's national media, then there's regional media, right? So no one in local media, no one in Borneo Post, no one in Daily Express. Yeah? They would print what we sent them. And then some Vibes did some, but it was, we could see after a while that macam it was on and off lah. Sometimes he did something and he did some interviews, but did anyone take it up and be like, I am just gonna make this my everyday life and I'm gonna investigate the shit out of this. I'm gonna call Dr. Ho, call Dr. Jeffrey, call Stan Golokin. Mongo Bay did that. Mongo Bay called Ho, called Stan, called Jeffrey. I mean, it's not like they didn't need numbers, they went and charted the numbers. Why did we not do that?
Why did we not do that? Why did we not? Why does our journalism industry because it is media. Is it a question again of disempowerment that the media, not just in Sabah but federal Malaysia as well, the country, our media has the printing act, all of that, printing publishing act that was locked up with Operation Lalang in the late 80s under Mahathir, disempowered the media terribly. We used to have good media. So now we're talking federal policy on things like the Printing Publishing Act, stuff like that, right? So it's to be aware of why we don't have that journalistic, that ballsy journalism that.
Yeah, because I don't know, it could have been podcasts, could have been Zoom roundtables, could have been articles, blogs. I mean, any of the above, right? Why was that not thriving? Why? Yeah. So anyway, not to belabor the point lah, but I think that's central to this happening. Yeah.